What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Timeout with SKO. I'm here with special guest Taylor Statham. He runs an academy in Santa Clarita known as Statham Academy, where he's also a club director for his club team, Creators. He is a former pro. He's played professionally in over 13 countries. And I just want to say thank you for being here today.
Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I haven't had too many former pros come on and talk about their journey just being a pro overseas. Talk about how, when that started for you, how that journey was for you, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. My path is different. We could date it all the way back to high school and prep school, just kind of going through tons and tons of adversity. But I'd say like when I really became a pro was in college when I was struggling. Just coming off the bench, limited minutes, short leash. I think those lessons ultimately, habits I had to create and, just coming off the bench, instant production, things like that, just having a sense of urgency, being the first in, last out. I think things like that ultimately shaped why I was so successful as a pro. And then, just like going overseas, I come from a Division II school. I averaged about 10 points a game, my senior year. So it's nothing like outstanding on paper. Didn't have crazy connections or an agent representing me. Just kind of took a chance and went on a tour to the Philippines because I'm part Filipino to go check it out. And honestly, it was like more of a money grab for the guy who was doing it at the time. But I connected with a buddy of mine who I'd been actually training and helping him before he'd gone over there, and he kind of connected me with his agent, worked out in front of them. And then, long story short, got signed to like a second division team out there as my papers were being worked on as an import. Did really well, made more money than I should have my first year, and it kind of just like opened me up to this crazy world of overseas basketball.
Where's been your favorite place to play and why?
Some really, really cool spots. Qatar, Russia were definitely like up there. But I'd say just like the love you get in Asia is unlike anything else. I always say the Philippines just because they're fanatics. Like I don't think there's any sport in the world where the fans, even soccer in Europe and South America, isn't as crazy as Filipino fans for basketball. I mean, you'll just drive down the street and see little courts or hoops set up and kids and flip-flops and barefoot running around, and they can name every NBA player, all their stats, all their signature mantras. And I just think like the pure love that you get while you're out there is something you never get to experience here for sure.
What do you think's the biggest thing that you've learned as a player playing overseas that you now try to instill in some of the players that you're working with currently?
Just controlling the controllables. Playing overseas, you have to deal with a lot mentally while you're over there. Being alone, being away from everybody, FOMO kicking in, being homesick, adjusting to their culture. The more you can adjust to their culture and their customs, and kind of win the fans over and win the people over, that's what's going to get you re-signed more often than not. And then, just dealing with the politics that come with it. I think all the lessons that I learned and had to fight through as a player just to scrape by and ultimately make it kind of shaped me into the coach, the businessman, the father, the husband, and all that I am today.
I think something really cool that you do, and we were talking about this a little bit off camera before we started, was you do these sort of exposure events for clients that you work with. Tell me what inspired that and just sort of, what your goal was when you initially started putting together teams and doing these sort of 3-on-3 events or going to other countries and being competitive there.
Yeah, I think when I first started, coming back home from overseas, I instantly tried to help like kids get to college where I'm from because so many kids are like overlooked, especially being in Santa Clarita. We're not in the prime of LA. A lot of kids don't have access to travel ball and just like, higher level trainers who can get them places. And so that was always my thing is just like kind of take care of home base because, that's where I'm from. And I was very lucky to slip through the cracks, and not everybody was, and it kind of grew over the years. And then teams would be looking like, hey, do you know a player? And I'd say, oh yeah, I have this point guard in the Drew League, or I have this center, and I start plugging guys in with teams, and they started trusting me. And then other teams in the same league, they started asking me for players. So I just kind of grew those relationships and always tried to do right by people, put the right guys in the right positions, and, not knuckleheads or anything, and just give teams what they were looking for. And ultimately, how talented the guys in LA are. You could go to the VBL and see guys and be like, yo, how is this dude not in the G League or not, somewhere overseas? And then, yeah, so like the last couple years, I've had opportunities to bring teams different places. Got invited to China, sent a couple teams out there a few years back, and kind of didn't know what I was doing. And then like a year and a half ago, was able to take a team to the Philippines. So I started with again, my local guys I coach with, kids who had just finished college. I've kind of helped throughout the years. All 10 of them ended up getting offers. And then I was like, man, I'm pretty good at this. This is a lot of fun. This is experiences they wouldn't, ever have otherwise. And one of my good friends, Colin, he played in Ireland and different places in Asia. He lives in LA. He runs cross court, and he, this is something that he's super passionate about. So he was telling me hey man, we got to keep doing this. I'd love to partner up with you. And kind of where I'm at, I'm just so busy with the youth league and the AAU and the grassroots side of everything. And I kind of told him all right, if we're going to do this, you're going to have to, take the lead on it. I'm going to support you fully. And because I know how I am. When I put my mind to something, I'm super obsessed with it. I'm up till 4 a.m. In my notes, on the computer, just perfecting every bit of it. And, he brought that to the table too. So, we partnered with the TAT, just took a team to China. A few of the guys already got signed. In September, we're supposed to go to England. October, we're going back to the Philippines. And then November, we're going to go back to the TAT for the grand finale. So, it's tough. It's getting guys to take chances on themselves and invest in themselves, especially when guys are super talented and they've had kind of everything handed to them through AAU and college and kind of had everybody holding their hand all the way through. And now is that realization, nobody's there for you. You're on your own. You have to figure it out. Nobody on the other side of the world knows who you are. They're not coming to look for you. There's a million guys who have pro experience, who have D1 experience, and just, head and shoulders have advantages over you. So just trying to open up doors for the guys like myself who are just overlooked, kind of hidden gems, but just love the game, So I think, when your purpose kind of fuels, your passion fuels your purpose, it doesn't feel like work. So for me, this has been just tons of fun, and I'm just looking forward to, what's next.
Yeah. Something you said about being overlooked is something that I can relate to just as a player. Obviously, I did never really meet the eye test. Talk about how you had success, even though you were overlooked, along your journey. And what sorts of things do you share with the players that you help get overseas, to help them be successful in those situations?
Yeah, I just think man, I put my whole life into basketball, everything. And so no matter where a player's at, it's I've been through this phase, probably oftentimes you probably feel the same, you look at a kid and you're like, man, this was me at 15, or this was me at 19. And you don't know what's on the other side if you just keep pushing. So just speaking from experience, never quitting and just always finding a way to make it work just kind of gives me the confidence and reassurance to kind of guide, these kids and these overseas players. And, because I know exactly what they're going through, and I know what everybody's probably telling them, but I also know what they need to hear. And sometimes, it's love, and sometimes it's a stern voice. So just trying to find that happy medium of, what they need. And ultimately at the end of the day, they're playing a game that we love, and it's just a game, as intense as it gets and as crazy as, all the outside noises. Once you kind of dial everything back and you just focus on, man, this is the game I love. This is the game I grew up, playing. I think that just kind of sheds the weight, and just makes things easier for players. So for my guys overseas, oftentimes it's just, being mentally tough, just dealing with adversities, finding the best way to be a star in your role and understanding that time is temporary. And it's like, I remember times where I'd be in Thailand and Indonesia, and I was like, man, I hate my situation. My friend's over here, he's making way more money. They're in a way better situation. And you look back and you miss those memories one day.
So now that you've kind of hung it up, you're not playing professionally anymore. You run a program called Creators, and then you also have Statham Academy Elite on the girls' side as well, where you have 4 teams. Talk about what inspired you to create the program and how within your program you implement sort of the teachings of the game versus just going out there and hooping.
Yeah. So I think I got to give a lot of credit to my partner, Travis DeVita. I mean, I was just so like in such a like player's mindset when I was overseas. And even when I'd be home, I'd be training and helping, the older guys, but I'd be in such a player's mindset. And he was so fixated on helping kids at the time and like wanting, to help kids grow and things like that. And me, I was like, man, I don't want to work with kids. Like they're not serious enough. I want to work with high school, college, pro, and then as you get older and you start working with high school, college, and pro, you realize how hard-headed they are and how hard it is to change like some of these guys. And you come to realize like the real change happens in the grassroots, at the youth level. And, a lot of these kids, they go through, crazy, crazy things in their life. Maybe they come from like a single parent, or they live with their grandparents, or they just had like traumatic experiences growing up. And you can really guide kids the right way and help them grow and help them have the right mentality that'll lead them through life. And that's kind of what pushed me towards more of the grassroots side. Because during COVID, like when I was coming to your runs and stuff, I was, I had a gym down in Watts. Every week I was working with like 70 or 80 pros. And it was a lot of fun, but it was just like, man, it was like pulling teeth, and it was like speaking to deaf ears almost. And just seeing the excitement like my youth league brings and just like the growth through travel ball and the doors it's opening has been tremendous. And then, yeah, like obviously I'm a late bloomer. I'm super unathletic white guy. So, growing up, I had to think the game and had to learn how to get to actions and make reads early. So for every player, whether you're like me or you're just a freak athlete, I mean, it's just going to maximize your game. So that's a non-negotiable. A lot of coaches, they always argue freedom, having kids just learn on their own, just kind of like a lazy way, and then overcoaching and calling a play and making them robotic. So just trying to find that happy medium is just like, I mean, you're like a mad scientist trying to do it. You're like pouring in like Dexter's lab.
Right. How do you find coaches that believe in that same philosophy and, teach? It doesn't necessarily have to be in the same way you do, but with the principles that you believe are most important.
Yeah. So like over the years, Travis and I, like we've always had our disagreements, I'd say, like, going back and forth. I think we're pretty like-minded in the way we play basketball as individuals. So when we play, like, we're always like, man, there's no one I'd rather play with. Me, I'm more like free-flowing. Like growing up playing at the Drew League, I've been the only white dude on my team. Like I know how to do the best of both. For him, it's like very structured. We got to get a certain amount of swings. We got to get to these actions every play. And I think just finding guys that truly love the game, even if they have a different perspective, if you love coaching kids and you love helping kids grow, you're gonna want to coach, and you're gonna be coachable. And I think just finding the right people where you guys can grow together is essential.
The other piece of that we haven't talked about yet is the parent piece of that.
Oh man.
And so,
the toughest piece.
Right, you laugh because you already know. But how do you get parents on board with, this isn't about your kid, we're going to play the right way.
Yeah.
It's not, we don't care how many points the kid scores. These are the things that matter. How do you do that within your program?
I think taking the time to try to educate parents is essential. But it's tough. I mean, parents, they have a million things going on. A lot of them are successful in other realms in their life, and they try to compare it to basketball. And, they think because maybe they do this part of business well, that, they have a high graded opinion in basketball. And that's, ultimately not the case. And I mean, just trying to teach them like, hey, we want what's best for just creating that relationship and that trust. Like, we want what's best for your child, and this is how we're going to do it, and showing them the whole picture, not just like what we want your child to do, but what we want these other kids to do ultimately, and why it's important for our team goal. And, I think a lot of coaches, especially like when we grew up, they are closed door practices, things like that for that reason. For me, I'd rather have parents there all the time. I'd rather have them hear the teachings, hear the care in our voice, hear the reasoning behind things, just so they understand the vision. And, we live in this crazy day and age of like everybody keeping up with the Joneses and jumping travel ball team to travel ball team. And it's like, dude, you're in 7th grade and you've played 20,000 AAU games, dude. Like your knees are going to be shot by the time, that's not what's important right now. So, I mean, ultimately, like, I think I've come to the best understanding I've ever had of just like kids are going to leave sometimes, and parents are going to think the grass is greener other places, or, be looking for other things. But ultimately, like if you teach the right way, you create those relationships, you create a family environment. I mean, the right people are going to come, the right pieces. And, like even with the girls program, like I created the girls program for 3 girls that I trained, and all of them are going to go on to play D1. And our best player left, right before the spring, after we had sat their parents down, like, hey, this is our schedule. Which ones can we make? We came up with a whole agreement, came up with a plan. I actually got her on our national team and did what people thought was the impossible. And she ended up leaving, and man, that broke my heart, but the girls that ended up coming and the team chemistry and just the success, we went 21-2, 6 of our girls are being recruited by schools. 3 of them are about to get offered. 4 of them have visits this summer. 1 just went to an All-American camp and was one of the top players. I mean, it's you get upset over that little stuff, but it's just you have no idea what's around the corner,
So I want to ask you this, because you mentioned this piece about, playing a ton of games. So for you, what's the sweet spot? Right, we see a lot of these kids are in AAU tournaments. They're playing every weekend. They're playing 4 games every day on the weekend, and like you said, your body gets shot really young.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the sweet spot, or what would you recommend as far as development and then games?
Yeah, I think it just depends on what you need. Like, what type of player are you right now? Where are you in your development? Do you need games? Do you need skill work? Do you need to learn how to make reads? Do you need to watch basketball? Everybody's different. A lot of kids, I mean, most kids need the weight room. They don't even ever touch it, So just trying to find that. But I would say with the girls, especially since girls are higher risk of ACL tears and things like that. I try to go 2 tournaments a month, and then just a lot of training, a lot of teachings, because we play intense and we play fast. Every tournament we've played, I think we've led the tournament in points in 5 out of 6 in the spring. So all of our girls could shoot. We're pushing the pace. We're advancing up court. So when you play intense like that, you're moving, you're cutting. You don't want to play 5-6 games a weekend, 30 games. And then we're doing that at practice to get ready for the games. All it takes is 1 kid to tear their ACL, and you learn pretty quickly. But yeah, I would say growing up playing pickup is more important. You figuring out how to play against bigger players, faster players, how to make reads, how to find your voice on the court. I have my players play 21 a lot. I have them play 3x3, FIBA 3x3, because it's in the half court setting and 12-second shot clock. And, are you going to be dead 3 minutes in because you're trying to go ISO, or are you going to learn how to get to back screen slips and, little hook screens and things like that? So I think just It depends on the player, but I don't think kids need to play. I see some kids playing every weekend, year round, and I see some kids playing multiple teams.
Mhm.
I have this discussion with some of my parents all the time. Like they don't need to do that. They're just stiffening their body. They're just setting themselves up, for something bad to happen later on.
When I talk to my clients' parents about, this is like a huge question, in the community right now. How many games should you be playing? What should you be prioritizing? And I always talk about development, right?
Mm.
Development to me is the most important thing because you can only play in a game with the current skill level you have. You're not going to grow your skill level by playing in a game. You're going to get experience, right? That's valuable in some way, but the actual skill, right? You have to develop that, through training off court. For you, how do you talk to parents or players that you're working with about the difference of practice and development? Because in team practice settings, you're still not always getting that individualized skill work that's valuable in working with a player development coach.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could look at every team, like high school, college, these AAU programs, and see their best players are probably the ones training the most outside of their team practice, um, and then the ones that are lifting, the ones like some kids are just going to be naturally jumping out of the gym, dunking as freshmen, but a lot of these kids, the ones that are all yoked up and moving well and just like more explosive and quicker to these spots, it just makes the game so much easier. Um, so I mean, yeah, I think both are so important, but I think if you really love basketball, you working out outside of practice is the most important thing. It's like the kids that are the best players that I've trained, and not just trained in seasons and like, oh, he's with me for 2 summers. Like the kids that I've developed over the years, like an Andrew Meadow at Boise State, like after this year he's gonna go to the NBA, and he like with him and certain other kids, I have to have conversations where it's like, you need to stop working out.
Mm.
Like you need to have confidence in yourself to where it's like you can take a day or two off, get away, reset your mind, let your body heal, and not feel like you're not doing enough. Those are always the best players, like the ones that are obsessed, because then it's not work. It's just they feel free because that's what they want to do. So yeah, I would say like the more kids can put in skill work, and it doesn't have to be 2 hours, just crazy, crazy skill work. If you get into a routine and it's every day, 45 minutes, an hour and a half, depending on what your load is that week, I mean, that's going to separate you more than anything.
Yeah. So you've been running creators for how long now?
We started creators, shoot, 10 years ago. I think it's a decade this year. Yeah.
So within that 10 years, you've now decided to embark on a new project, which is Statham Academy Prep.
Mhm.
Talk about what inspired you to start this academy and where you see the sort of, trajectory of high school basketball going in the next few years.
Yeah. I would just say like the landscape of basketball is what ultimately led me to doing this. Because if you would have talked to me like 3-4 years ago, I was against holdbacks, all that double transfers, all that stuff. But everything's changed now. If you look at the top 25 kids in California, 23 of them are holdbacks. You know, um, so it's like you're either adjusting to what's going on right now, and you're helping your players, and you're kind of giving them, just advantages that other players didn't have before, or you're kind of old school and getting left behind type of thing. And honestly, like I think it's great for the kids just because it gives kids an extra year with their parents. Like these years are fleeting. Their childhood is pretty much almost over. And once you get to high school, your schedule is just jam packed. It's like how many years do you really have with your parents where you guys could just spend all this time together? Honestly, not that many. So it kind of gives you like another year. Boys especially, we're a little more immature, so it gives us like a year to mature and develop. And when you're in an environment like that and away from school where you guys are messing around all day and doing God knows what these days. And you're around men who are teaching you and trying to help mold your mind and get you ready for college basketball and get you ready, for interviews and sponsorships and NIL and just like being somebody who walks around town and all eyes are on. I think that's just a huge advantage because you go from being a kid who could possibly get in trouble and be influenced to somebody who's confident and somebody who's determined and knows where they're going. And then obviously the basketball, just a whole year to lock in. What can you do with your kids if you have 3 hours a day, Monday through Friday, outside of their practices? It's like, man, that's ultimately what created like a lot of these college and pro guys I have now is just like during COVID, we didn't waste any time. Every day we just got, boom, all right, we got nothing but time. Let's go work out in the morning. Let's go lift in the afternoon. Let's go work out at night. And then those habits carried over to them being in high school and then being in college. And then it just gave them such an advantage. And guys who were just light years ahead of them, it was like within a year they passed. So I think, the prep for me was a no-brainer. And I kind of noticed it when Andrew was going through high school and he was the only guy true to his grade at all these camps he was going to and all these all-star games. And it was almost like he was overlooked because those guys just had an extra year of all the media hype and all the mixtapes and things like that. And then with some of our creators teams, our 7th and 8th grade teams are ranked on the West Coast for like grassroots and made hoops. And the only teams that we're losing to barely are the kids with all the holdbacks that are like bigger than me, 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", dunking. And we got little 13-year-olds, like little 12-year-olds, trying to guard these giants. And then we play these ranked teams that are our age and we're blowing them out by 20. So, for us, it's just going to help put our players in a better position and just help them grow into the individuals we ultimately see them becoming.
And what age is this academy for?
Just for middle school, just because of the intensity of it, and just like the day to day. And, it'd be hard to ask a elementary school kid to homeschool,
right.
But like somebody who's in middle school who already has all his friends and has his personality and, wants to be around like-minded people. I feel like that's like the perfect age, like right before high school, lock in for a year and then boom, go in and you're already varsity ready. You're already, JV ready.
So in the next 10 years, let's say, where do you see your Statham Academy prep going? And what is your vision and goal for it?
Man, I'm just hoping this first year goes really well. We mapped out like already our curriculum for our day-to-day weightlifting and plyos and mobility program and on-court skill. Like we're already looking at the players that we have and just writing down like their weaknesses, their strengths, what we need to build around and the weaknesses that we need to improve. So we're just kind of taking it step by step right now. I wouldn't say I have a 10-year plan. I'd love to be big enough to have like a real school and have like a on campus teachers and things like that. But, just baby steps right now.
This question, I think for all former players, like there's a lot of routes we can take after we finish playing.
Mm.
Coaching is one of them. One of the things for you, obviously, is business. Talk about why you chose that sort of path and how you've enjoyed it and just what you've learned along your business journey within basketball.
I would say, for me, I just kind of like, it just naturally happened. My dad was an entrepreneur. So I grew up most weekends, all throughout the summer, working his detailing business, getting up at 5 a.m., detailing cars, having to talk to his clients, coming back at 3 p.m. And then it was like my time. I'm like dead tired. And then it's like, all right, now I'm going to play basketball. And just kind of being around him and seeing how sales worked and seeing, him giving me flyers and the brochures at a young age and be like, all right, hit those doors.
You were marketing early.
Yeah. So I got some like really good hands-on experience early. But I think more than anything, just wanting to help people. that was always my goal. Even as a kid, I remember like doing interviews in the mirror by myself and like, just wanting to make it so I could put my hand back and pull everybody up with me was always my goal. I didn't know how I wanted to do it. I didn't know what it looked like. And it kind of just naturally took shape. We went from doing camps when I first started coming back from college to like some trainings to, throwing tournaments when I come back from overseas and doing bigger camps and doing bigger events. And, when I was in college, I liked to party a little. So, I throw parties once in a while. So it's kind of like led to like, me being able to throw events and, just putting all those experiences I had in basketball and just trying to help all these kids who are going through the same thing.
Yeah, I totally get it. There's so many like of those little skills that we learn along the way that we don't realize are actually going to be of value to us at a later point. And similar for me, like with my business, like I used to throw parties as well, so that's why I started laughing. And I would go to the mall, and I would. This is so funny that I did this. I would get flyers, and I couldn't afford to have them cut, so I would go to, FedEx, and I'd cut, like, hundreds of flyers myself, and I'd go to the mall, and it was on, I'm not talking, like, nice paper, right? Like, this is just your regular, like, sheet of white paper, and I'd go and hand out flyers at the mall to people about, the event that I was
Oh,
throwing.
that's awesome.
But like, it's a form of marketing in some way. And I use that skill even now to build my business. So, I totally get that. Um, One of the other things that I really love that you do is you give back a lot to the community. Talk about some of the like charity events and some of the events that you put on for the community.
Yeah, I think just like recent ones, like year to year, we do like a coat drive during Thanksgiving. We do like a canned food drive. Um, we've done shoe drive like for kids in the Philippines that can't afford shoes. So like the last one, we got like close to 250, 260 pairs of shoes, which was really cool. And just like seeing once they get them and receive them, just like the smiles on their faces and the appreciation. And I work with this group in Uganda, and they always need like just different. We'll send them jerseys or basketballs and things that they need. And then back home, like I'm on the board for this nonprofit, The New Way, because surprisingly, there's a lot of homeless kids within our district, like hundreds of homeless kids. Yeah, so we do like a lot of charity work for them. We have like a 3-on-3 event at the end of the summer, every summer. All the proceeds go to that. So yeah, I mean, we're in such a good position. Like you've put yourself in a position where you have a great business and a great standing with your community. So I just try to lead the right way and, give a helping hand, and especially like when it comes to kids, like, dude, like that gets to my heart every time, like,
Yeah.
if it's like people or like a grown person, I could easily say no, but if it's a kid, like, kids are so innocent and pure, and not every kid gets to grow up. Like I feel blessed that I grew up with 2 amazing parents in a loving household, protected, and not everybody gets that, and so I try to do my part and everything I can to help where I can, for kids who don't have that.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's, why we all do what we do is to be able to help and give back. And so, just from afar, being able to watch is inspiring, and I respect what you do, and love following your journey. And
Appreciate it.
it's been cool, like especially during COVID. I think that's when we really started to connect more, and like just watching creators grow within the last year, and seeing the success that some of your players have had is pretty awesome.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Last question for you. If you were to give advice to somebody that was interested and more so pursuing the business route in basketball, whether that's being, a club director, and having your own program, whether that's, being something within, starting your academy, what advice could you give them?
I would say just chase personal development as much as you can. I think that's what had led me to everything I've gotten. If I was the same person I was when I was playing overseas 8, 9, 10 years ago, I wouldn't be in the position I'm in to help all these people. And, I wouldn't be able to deal with all the twists and turns in the business realm. I think if you're trying to coach, like, you really have to go out of your way to study and just like obsessively study the game and study and know your players. That's what drives me, is just the thought of somebody could do a better job and help one of my players more than me. That's like the one thing that will keep me up at night, like, for the longest. And I remember, like, when I first started coaching, just like, okay, I've played the game. A lot of people have played the game, but they don't know how to coach it. Like, what are better ways I can articulate my thoughts? What are better ways I can teach? How can I talk to certain players to get through to them? What are things that players need, like, in depth? Like, what is their game lacking? Where are they going to struggle at the next level? And I think just your personal growth, and you just trying to become the most resourceful person for information possible is like the two key elements of being successful in this industry.
That's great. I love the resourcefulness. Like, I think there's so much value in just having answers and knowledge that you can share with people. So thank you for sharing that. If somebody is interested in learning more about you personally, your business, if they're interested in, maybe joining your team or your academy, where can they find some more information about you and the things that you're doing?
Yeah, they could go on statehamacademy.com. Find me on social media: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Statham Academy, Statham Academy. And yeah, I get messages all the time from people all over the world. I try my best to answer them as best as I can, or, help connect people. And, you'd be surprised, like, people I've never met, I've connected with, from other countries, and connected them with people from other countries, and, made deals happen or help them get to school. So, that's the beautiful thing about the day and age we live in, is just like, we're not that far off from anybody. Like, imagine, imagine our parents, like, they had no internet. They didn't know what was going on over there. Nobody, like, they couldn't call. They couldn't do anything. Everybody's just like one or two clicks away now. So I think being able to use that is key.
Yeah, I think accessibility is huge now.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for joining. I appreciate your time and everything that you shared today.
No, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Got you.